Hello, hello. We are live for another amazing episode of the Boston Branded Podcast. Today we have someone that I hold very near and dear to my heart. She has such a beautiful soul. She's so kind and she just knows how to tell these amazing stories so well. But before we get into it, of course you guys know we have the cue to intro and then we will see you on this next side. Hey,
Hey.
Shannon Busse, I'm so excited to have you. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. I love your background, it's so pretty.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's so fun to be here. I
Of
love your intro energy and so fun.
let's get started by you introducing yourself to the community and kind of letting them know what you do and how you got started.
Yeah. Hi. So my name is Shannon Busse, and I am a story strategist or a brand storyteller. So I help businesses and entrepreneurs find the stories that they should be telling and understand how to structure them in a way that it effectively connects with their ideal clients. So it's a way to grow their business and to connect more deeply with the people that they really care about serving. And how I got started. So I came into this space, like so many entrepreneurs, in kind of a windy path that was somewhat unexpected. I was a photographer and had a photography business, and then COVID hit and photography disappeared. And I joined some communities and took some marketing certification courses. And kind of as I was stumbling around in that space, I really landed on the heart of what it is that I love to do and realized that it was always the same thing, which was stories. And as a photographer, I was creating and showcasing visual stories. And with the marketing knowledge and strategy brought in, I kind of brought the writing piece back. I've been writing since I was a kid, and I studied communications in college. And so I literally can still remember the day where I was sitting right here at my computer and I'm like, that's it. That's my red thread. That's the story piece. And as for many of you guys can attest, because you've had a similar journey of finding that moment that you're like, oh, this is it. This is the heart of what I do. This is the piece that ties all the different things together, all the levels of expertise you've had, all the experiences that you've had. Like, this is what I was meant to do. This is why I'm here on this earth. And for the rest of you might still be searching for that piece. And for me, that piece always comes through story. When I listen to clients tell their stories, really, I'm just listening for alignment, and I'm able to find the themes and that red thread that kind of ties it all together and really connects their services with their ideal people. And that's me.
I love that. I love that. And I remember when I first met you, I remember thinking to myself because I didn't have like I was like I don't have a rags to riches story. I never know what to say when I'm talking to people and telling them when they ask me like, well, what's your background? And I'm like, well, I'm adopted, and then from there, and I'm just like saying this stuff, and like I just thought it was just a nice gloss over conversation. And then I remember you were like, Carrie, like that's really powerful. I was like, what's powerful? I don't see it. What are you talking about? But like just even having that conversation with you when we did our story session, it really opened my eyes to the power of even my story and the stories that I tell and how powerful it is and how it can touch so many people's lives with it. So like I would like to say thank you for that.
Oh, you are most welcome. I remember that too. And that's actually a really, really common thing that people struggle with. Their stories don't feel like stories. They feel like life, like it's your life. And when people try to pull in their personal story, their personal journey into a business set, it's hard to do because you're sifting through millions of details and emotions and timeline things and people. And right, it's really hard to distill that down to what is relevant and what is going to connect who I am,
Yeah.
what
And
I
it's
do, and who I serve.
Yeah, and I think that's what I love about what you do, because like even with some of our clients, a lot of times we tell them, especially when it comes to selling high ticket offers, high ticket offers, the difference between somebody buying your high ticket offer and not buying is the story that you tell and the
Yeah.
connection that they feel with you. And when I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to go down the story rabbit hole and like understand this full concept of like how to create stories and what I call how to create tethers. So I would love to know, like, what are some, like, as you've been going through these journey and things like that, can you tell us like this evolution, because I know that you've been evolving so much in just the time that we've known each other, this evolution to like how you started to where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, my business and my passion for what I serve and the way in which I serve is was created through some of the most destabilizing and kind of darkest hours of my life. It stems back to a point in time where I discovered that there was this entire secret narrative that was being created about who I was and what my family life was about. And through vacuuming one day and a composition notebook that I thought belonged to one of my kids. And I picked it up and it was filled with all kinds of crazy, toxic beliefs and thoughts and ideas and accusations and everything from the man that I was married to. And we had been married for a couple of decades um, plus at that point. And by seeing all the things that he was saying and believing, it gave me, I mean, first it shattered my world and it shattered my identity. And after I picked up the pieces and after I went to therapy and after I read lots of books and got lots of support and kind of developed a support system for myself, then I was finally able to see the gifts in what came from that experience, because it nudged me, forced me, however you want to say it, into a position where I had to choose who I was. And I had to decide, you know what, I am going to step up. I am going to grab this mic. I am going to tell my own story. You no longer get that right, that privilege, that opportunity to do that. This is for me to do. And so I needed to kind of step into a new place of who I was and what kind of future I wanted to build for myself and for my children. And nobody should be confined or defined by a story that someone else is telling that isn't accurate and isn't reflective of who they want to be and the life that they're creating. And so what I do really is I provide an alternative. I allow a way for people, for entrepreneurs, for businesses to look at some of their messiest stories, hardest stories, darkest stories, and really pull out what are the amazing lessons that come from these experiences that you can then share with your people, that they will resonate with, they will feel seen and heard and understood, and they will have that desire to work with you on a deeper level. Because I hate to break it to you, in the marketing space, it's less about the product that you're selling and it's more about the way in which you're selling it, the story you're telling, and most importantly, who you are. And the best way to showcase who you are is by telling a story.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yes, 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 yes. So I think for me, one of my biggest goals for people who are watching, are watching live or on the replay, is that they start taking time and kind of looking within and asking yourself. And this is what I tell like our clients in our group coaching program, is what are the stories that can create tethers to you and create tethers to your clients. So a lot of times what we've seen is what people are looking for is somebody they can relate to, somebody that has like who is sharing that same story. But a lot of times your clients and your story might be completely different. So what you can do in those situations, what I've seen is where you use one of your clients and you talk about where they were at in their situation and really bring it down to who they are as a human, and then talk about that journey that they went through working with you. And I feel like that's been a really cool way, what I've seen for people who are sometimes lost on, like, especially when they first start telling stories. I feel like, so a lot of times it's easier to tell other people's stories
Yeah.
before you can start telling your own story.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Because to be able to tell your own story requires some deep work, and it requires safe spaces, and you kind of dig into that. Telling client stories, I use 3-step stories that I tell people to do, and they can literally take any testimonial that any client has ever given you, and you can create a 3-step story, which is just basically step one is, what is the struggle? What is their problem? Describe what they needed help with. Step two is the solution. What did you help them through? What service did you offer? And then the third step is what was on the other side. And so every story becomes a mini journey that allows your potential clients to envision what it's like to work with you. And they're also able to say, like, raise their hand, like, I'm struggling with that too. Like,
Um,
I want that solution too. I really want what's on the other side of that solution. And they can, it's almost like you're future pacing them,
yes,
into working with you, but it's 100% invitation based marketing. I think there's a shift right now in the market, thank goodness, away from kind of the twisting the knife type of marketing and the you're missing out marketing and the scarcity marketing. And this is all invitation based. It's like, this is who I am. This is who I help. I can help solve these problems. You know where to find me. And it's not manipulative, because I think a lot of times people worry about using stories in a manipulative way in marketing, at least if they're heart-based and they, have integrity in their businesses. That is a valid concern. And this is one way that avoids all of that confusion and that drama. And you can really ground yourself in, I'm telling these stories because I'm honestly trying to serve and make the world a better place through my business.
exactly. So, I know one of the things that we always like go deep on is this idea of these core story vaults. I want to kind of dig into that, because I know when I created it for myself, and plus when we do it for our clients in BSA, the power of what happens when they're able to have those core story vaults. I feel like it just makes life easy.
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of shifts in, first of all, it gives you language. It gives you the language that you can use to tell your story in a succinct way without all of the irrelevant details about who was there and what you did next and what happened after that. A lot of that, it's hard for people to sift that out, because when we go to retrieve a story from our brains want to connect all of the other things that were in and
Hmm.
around that moment. And that's going to dilute your message and actually make your story significantly less powerful. So kind of doing that deep work to find that story gives them the language, and it also shifts the way that they see themselves. There's sometimes when I work with clients that they say to me, I never saw that connection before. And like you call them tethers, right? It's those bridges between what they've gone through and what their clients are currently experiencing or what they aspire to. I
Yeah.
call them bridge sentences, and so in their story, it's these sentences that are equally true of you and your experience, and true of what your client is feeling and experiencing.
Hmm.
And those are all the things that create the sense of trust, the psychological safety, the hope that you specifically are the person that's going to be able to help them solve the problem they have. But so when all of this work is done, there's a shift in confidence. There's the language piece, and then there's the confidence piece, and then there's an ability to kind of expand or shrink their story so that it
Hmm.
becomes really adaptive in whatever different situations that they need to use it.
Yes.
Elevator pitch or a presentation intro or a blog post or a social media post or a video script. Like, there's so many different places and ways that these stories can be used, especially these core stories about who you are. And so it becomes this just really fun kind of plug and play story system.
Oh, I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So less less because I want the audience to kind of get an idea of like this idea, or can we walk them through like maybe if they want to start doing the inner work, like what do they need, like what needs to happen for them to start taking those steps to kind of looking within and doing creating their own personal stories.
Yeah, that is a fantastic question, and actually one of my favorite ones to talk about, because there's there's so much deep inner work that happens with story work. And when I work with people, I usually one of my main filters is that people need to be at the point where they can look at their own stories in a non-judgmental way. And so that means that they're not blaming other people that have been in their journey and have affected it in a negative way, but they're also not blaming themselves. They're not carrying, too much. So it's really important for people to get to that place of neutrality where they can look at their stories and kind of sift through what's there without all of the emotions that can get tangled up. Because if you, once you get to that place of neutrality, that's when the creativity comes in and you can
It
start to
happened.
see new connections and new possibilities for ways to use your story and different perspectives to use in telling it. And like, that's where the space of creativity comes from, is that place of neutrality.
So with this idea that you have to kind of be able, I think a lot of times I hear they need to be able to talk from a scar, not a wound. How is that? Does that mean that they might need to work with like a mindset coach or stuff like that before they move into telling their stories, or is there a like a hack or trick that you do to kind of help them be able to take that next journey or that next step?
I think the key to all of it, because I have heard that phrase too, that speak from your scar and not your wound. And there is a level of truth with that. I mean, with major traumas, major abuse, major life struggles, death of a loved one, sickness of a child, all of that, there is a need to process that before you can get to a place where you're telling your story in order to impact other people, instead of like needing something from your audience, whether that's empathy or validation or or whatever it is. It can get kind of complicated. And so sometimes, I mean, if it's serious trauma, I always suggest therapy, mindset work. Sometimes the space that I provide for people, like I am not a mindset coach, although there's a lot of mindset pieces to what I do. I am not a therapist, but I provide a safe space for people to just share their story. And sometimes, like, there's a lot that comes out that isn't ever going to be used in the brand story. And they know that, and I know that, but it's important to get it out in a place where they can just be heard. And then
And I think it's
after
interesting
that,
too because I think of like just me even looking at your journey and your story with like the ex husband. I remember the process of it being a more private conversation to you taking it publicly. And it
yes.
was almost like you had to kind of even go through that, like we became that space for you to be able to feel comfortable and like be ready to share that in a way that it wasn't attacking. It was more of like this is my journey and I'm happy for this journey because this journey has led me to where I am now.
Yes. Yeah. That it could be told from an empowering place
Yeah.
instead of a I'm a hot mess and my whole life is falling apart. And right. Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because yeah, it's story work needs concentric circles of trust.
Yeah.
And you need to have a very small, very, very trusted circle to share, the messiest versions, the earliest versions, because it just, like, you're clearing it out of your body, so that you're not carrying
Mm.
this with you. And the thing with stories is the more you tell the story, the more streamlined, the more crystallized, the more empowering and inspiring it can become. But it all starts with kind of that very, very safe, close knit, small, safe space. And then you practice and you practice. And then maybe, a next level. a slightly bigger circle of trust, you can share it. And then,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's very much a process of kind of testing the spaces and testing how you feel about it. Obviously, you don't want to go out and tell a story that literally triggers you
Yeah.
every time and causes you tremendous harm. Like, that's not going to serve you and that's not going to serve your clients. And so going through that process of distillation, I guess, really is you're finding the
And
most valuable parts.
it's funny it's funny for me. So as you all know, I'm like obsessed with brand archetypes, and I don't know if you remember, Shannon. Do you remember what I say your archetype was?
I can't remember the names. I remember the conversation that we had about it, and I can't
Yeah.
remember the names.
So I told you that you were an innocent brand. And when I told you you're an innocent brand, I don't think I really went into depth on like what that brand was, but what that brand is, and what I think is so funny for me, because it's like I feel like this is why what you do feels so good for you, because it's truly doing exactly what naturally is you. So for an innocent brand, literally where they strive is by creating safe spaces for people to uncover and discover their truths.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right.
Because it's all about like, I feel so safe and secure with you. You ask me these deep questions that I'm not really like, I've never allowed myself to ask my own self. And you're giving me the opportunity and a safe space for me to be able to say all the things that I want to say that I never thought was possible.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a big part of it. Sometimes we carry so many stories inside of ourselves. They're stories about ourselves. They're stories we tell to ourselves. And sometimes those stories are good for us to carry because they actually align with the life that we want to create. But sometimes those stories actually limit us and prevent us from serving in the way that we want to serve in our businesses and creating the kind of lives and businesses that we want to create.
And I
And
think
so
it's
sifting
interesting.
through is important.
And I think that I would love for you, what I would love to see for you, like this is me, future forecasting, is I would love for you to really like in your content talk about, because we know stories are powerful, but we a lot of times people to see it for powerful for good. But those same stories that you're sitting with and you're standing on, those also are stories that are creating a life for yourself that you might not want, because your subconscious mind has believed those stories to be true.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's even the idea of rewriting your narrative
Yeah.
and like allowing yourself to truly step into the life that you really want, which is where the innocent comes in. It shows people that life has endless possibilities. Um, so I just like, I love this. I was like, I love when their brand archetypes just line up with their vision, because like with the brand archetypes, I always tell people it's the innate version of who you are, your core motivator. So it's like, with that being your core motivator, and then that's what you're doing in business, it's just so amazing to see like why you're so happy and why you love it so much, because it's probably like the time that you're actually able to truly hone in and double down on you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find it endlessly fascinating that the hardest experience in my life is the thing that unlocked my gift. And I find that to be a common theme with the clients that I work with.
They need
We
the
tend
catalyst
to
moments.
we tend to really dig deeper. They're like, "Oh, I wasn't expecting to talk about that." Or it's really common to go all the way back to childhood and, either things that inspired them in childhood or things that happened and they started telling themselves stories about not being safe or not being enough or having to earn their position or, their validation or their love, like, yeah, like you. I remember that conversation of, Carrie, do you realize that what you're doing with your business is you are creating a bigger table and helping your clients and the brands that you work with create their own table? Because as a little girl whose brother dropped the bomb on you that you were adopted and you didn't realize, all of a sudden your world shifted and you were not sure if you belonged. And then all the years after that, you were trying to earn your belonging. by doing all these other things. And then here you are, you're like passing out belonging like it's candy, and you're teaching these brands how to create it for themselves by, branding and brand archetypes and, all of the amazing things that you do in your business.
Yeah, and I just think it's so cool because it's like for a long time, like when I think about when I first started my business, I really just focused on the story of my dad, because that's the only thing that I could see. Like, I was like, that just makes a lot of sense. It was like my dad, he was my catalyst moment, and that's the story. And that's all I'm going to tell. So when people ask me what I've done, how I got here, dad, boom, forward thinking. So it was like when I got to the point when I was able to, and it's funny because like it's exactly that situation. I had to go through inner work for me to realize my own story, because I was like glossing over it so much. I had all these other narratives that I'm a strong adopted person and I don't care about those things. But really I did. But I was like, I had all this other stuff that I created these narratives for to protect myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you were kind of looking at things at a more surface level. And this is common too, of how do my details of my story match up with the details of what my clients are wanting? And there's a lot of businesses that do that, and they never go deeper into kind of the river of common human emotion, which is really the things that allow people to resonate with your story. So most of the people that you talk to probably have never been adopted, right? They don't have that moment of, my brother told me I was adopted and I didn't know before this moment. And what do I do now? How do I earn my place in this family? They don't have that. But what they do understand is they have all had moments where they feel like they don't belong. They've had moments where they feel like they have to earn their place, where they have to jump through hoops, where they have to be perfectionistic in order to earn something. Like that's what they resonate with. And
And
so
it's
that's the
funny because
beautiful thing about stories, is that kind of create
yeah,
this magical middle space where meaning is created by the storyteller and the listener. It's not one of you or the other of you, it's both of you together.
it's funny too because like one of the things that came up, and you're right, like as I kept telling my story, something it popped up for me, and I was like, to be honest, the people that I work with, and this is really which was like the huge aha moment for me, when I was like, I don't have a particular people I work with. It's a type of person, and the type of person that I work with is a person that never, like, always is like, I don't want to do all this stuff, but literally this is what everybody keeps telling me I need to do, but it doesn't feel good. So they try it and then they hate it, and then they go back into their shell or to their community, and it just served them there. And they just play small, and they know they play small, but they're like, no one's given them permission to be able to just be them. So they feel like they just have to hide.
Yeah, they're trying their brand on from the outside in.
Yeah.
Right? They're looking at what everybody else is doing and they're like, "All right, I'll try this on." But really what they need to do is they need to create a brand from the inside out.
Mm-hmm. And the moment that I realized that, there were so many people that were like, "Oh my gosh, that's me." Like, I don't like any of this stuff. So I just hang out in my communities. And and it's funny because I kept seeing the same things where our clients would be so amazing and their communities would be like, "Oh my gosh, Lindsay is so amazing. Like she's a magician. Like I don't understand why everybody doesn't know about what she is and how she does what she does." And I would go to Lindsay, I'd be like, "Hey Lindsay, like we go," she was like, "Yeah, I don't want." And I'm like, "Why?" She was like, "Well, I tried this. It didn't work. I felt like I was doing all this stuff. I was trying to do this, and it just didn't feel like me." And I said, "Okay, let's be you." And she was like, "Oh, I can do that." I was like, "Yeah, it's quite easy." I was, and the analogy that I always say, and now that I'm a pet mom, I can say it. I was like, you can't stop being a mom just because like you go to work. You have to be a mom 24 hours a day, regardless if you're at work or not. That's the same thing about you being you. You have to be you regardless if you're in business or you're in personal. You just have to double down on that.
Yeah, and we make things so much harder for ourselves by trying to be like everybody else and try to kind of, okay, this guru over here says I got to do this, and this one says I got to do that. Let me try these different things, instead of starting from a place of who am I and what am I creating? And those are really the two most important questions. And that's what I love so much about business owners like you and like so many other people out there that make that space for your clients to be seen and heard first. Like that's the first step. Don't make me do all kinds of crazy gymnastics and contortions to fit into your programs and what you're offering. Hear me, see me, let's start there. And then let's work together and see what we can create.
And it's funny because, like, I was doing a presentation yesterday, and in all my presentations, I always say something along the lines, it keeps you honest. Like, I always say, I was like, it keeps me honest, it'll keep you honest. And everybody, and like, what she asked me, she was like, Carrie, like, what do you mean? She was like, I've noticed that you always say it keeps you honest. And I'm saying, and I told her, I was like, when you do your brand archetypes, when you ask those two main questions that I always tell people to ask, what it does, it allows you to look within yourself and ask yourself, are you being authentic or are you trying to be somebody else?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
And that's huge.
And if you say, I'm trying to be somebody else, you're not being honest. So do those things to keep you honest. I do agendas to keep me honest, keep me on track. I ask certain questions, but it's all about, because the thing is, like, you're like, so for me, I did a lot of inner work. I did a lot of inner work. I spent a lot of money on inner work. And one of the things that I realized is during this inner work, I was able to become the person that I always wanted to be. So if it would, one, be a waste of money and really jacked up to myself, if I go back and do stuff for other people after I did so much work for myself.
Yeah, it's a way to kind of pay it forward, right? It's hard to not give, like, when that's your default setting, you want to help other people and you want to kind of link arms and let's walk, scale this mountain together. Let's walk up that. And but it takes refiner's fire. I mean, the most amazing people that I've met and the most amazing entrepreneurs almost always have a story that they have had to overcome some significant things. And I always encourage people to tell that story. Like, don't tell me your happily ever after, your success story. Look at me, I'm generating X number of dollars in revenue a year. Tell me the story of what you overcame to get you to where you are, so that I can measure the depth of your commitment to my transformation. Because why else would I work with you? I'm not going to go work with you because you say you have a number of dollars that you make every year. I want to know what you're dedicated to, why it matters so much to you that you're serving in the way that you're doing, because that's like how I can gauge if I can trust you, if your values are aligned with mine, if you're really actually going to be able to help me in the way that I need to be helped.
No, I love that. Okay, so you told me that there was some really cool things that you're working on. So I need you to tell me now. I'm excited.
Okay. So I have a VIP day.
Whoop, whoop.
Story mapping VIP day, and it is kind of my gateway offer. So it's where everybody comes in, and then from that point, and even that day can be customized according to what you need. So what that looks like, the VIP day, is it's one entire day where we get on a call together and I do this comprehensive assessment of what your business is. So where do you want to use story? What content do you have that could be made better and more effective attaching a story to it? What presentations do you have that are really kind of dry and boring and too stuffed with content and need stories? What speaking aspirations do you have? What are your social media channels? What kind of videos are you putting out in the world, right? I assess your story needs, basically, is what that is. And then we go through a really deep story interview process where I am pulling your stories out and finding your stories, and I'm taking notes, and you just get to talk and tell me your stories, and I guide the whole conversation. And then from that day, I will match up your stories to where they can be used successfully. And so you walk out of that day with outlines of your stories. You understand what themes can be pulled out of your stories and where you can use that particular story in your existing business landscape. And then from there, I have done for you writing services that can be customized according to what you need. But I love it. I love the depth of it. I love how it's so comprehensive. And we look at all of the things, all of the pieces that you have out there. And then we find your best stories, your most powerful stories, make them even more powerful. And then we plug them in where they should go.
How many slides do you normally do a month?
This month I'm totally full. June, I think I have availability for 2, but normally I do up to 4 a month.
Are you okay with telling us the investment for the people?
Yeah, it's $2,000 for the VIP.
It's a steal.
Day.
It's a steal.
It's huge because people don't know. Like, first of all, they don't know what their stories are.
Yeah.
So we identify that. And then second of all, they don't know how to structure their story. And we do some of that work by outlining the major points in the story. And then they don't know where to use their story. And we solve that problem too. So it's like the 3 biggest problems that I see with entrepreneurs is how to find their story, how to structure their story, how to use their story. And so those are the 3 main problems that we tackle with this VIP day. And it's done in a day. Like,
it's in a day. You get all your stories in a day. Like, I feel like that's gifts. Because, like, I'll tell you, the BSA students, they were struggling. When they were like, oh, Carrie, what story should I use? And I'm like, go deep.
Yeah.
I was like, Shannon will be here soon, and then she'll tell you stuff.
I'm excited. Yeah, I love laser coaching. I love doing presentations with a little bit of laser coaching inside of people's communities. And I remember the one that we did for, for your clients, and it was so fun. It was so fun. I can't wait to do it again.
Yay! They're excited. They're like, we can't wait for Shannon to come. Like, I have some. They're like, well, we're waiting for. They're trying to procrastinate. We're waiting for Shannon to come so we can do our content. I'm like,
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about me being used as procrastination. I don't know. Get your stories.
Like, I can do my content. No, they're good. But no, I love that. I love VIP days. I feel like they're so powerful. They're able to kind of really give that like hit and get you off and going. We have a VIP day that I love doing as well. It's all about brand messaging, brand strategy, all the things. So I'm really excited that you have the VIP day. That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I think VIP days that outline strategy they're so valuable because people stay stuck in that for far, far, far too long.
For sure. Okay, guys. Well, we are going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for coming to hang out with us. Shannon, can you please let these amazing people where they know where they can find you all on the socials?
Yeah, absolutely. My social handle is at shannonbusse.biz. So I'm on Instagram there. Facebook, find me on Facebook, Shannon Busse. I'm, really active there. Feel free to send me a message. I also have a website at shannonbusse.com that is currently under construction and will be having significant modification to it in the next couple of months. But it's there.
Exciting. All right, guys. Well, we will see you next time. We're going to cue the intro. Shannon, don't leave. We're going to catch up.
All right.